Saxon and Norman Kings. All praises to Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. The book is by Christopher Brooke. And really want to get into maybe the first or so chapter. Just get us familiar with the book. Chapter 1. Chapter 1, the method of this inquiry. The further back we go from the modern world into the Middle Ages, the less material the historian has to work on. And by the way, you know what I'm always going to say, the list of these people that we're reading about, they were so-called black men and black women, of course. If a man wishes to study human society at work in detail, or to learn how to select the significant detail from a mass of information, he will do better to study very recent history. If he wishes to understand and enjoy the detective element in history, to see how one can wring information from a few scattered clues, or if he wishes to see human nature at work in a different context from his own, to stir his imagination by studying his own remote ancestors, remote not only in time but in their thoughts and their interests. Then he will be well advised to study the Middle Ages and will be richly rewarded for his efforts. This book could not hope to be a collection of biographies like others in the series. The kings were too many. Our information is too sparse. I have therefore, quite deliberately, made it a collection of problems. How were kings made? What did they do? How did we come to have kings at all? In the earlier chapters, by pursuing these questions, I hope to elucidate the nature of early kingship, to free it from the strange political notions which are inclined to cling to it, sometimes because of modern preconceptions, sometimes because of the lingering influence of 17th or 19th century historians who saw in kingship the origins of 17th century tyranny, and in royal councils the origins of parliamentary liberty. We shall find that the early kingship was surrounded by very different ideas from those to which we are accustomed. And as we pursue the story of the early English kings, we shall see some of these ideas working out in practice. The early kings are rarely more than names, but as the centuries pass, we find some who left their mark on English history. Ethelbert, Edwin, Offa, and from the time of Alfred on, we know something more of all the English kings than their dates and their battles by whatever route the sources open to us. I have tried to pursue these kings and reveal the manner of men by they were their tastes and interests and achievements. It is by worrying over some particular problem that we can hope best to get to know them. Why was King Athelstan so great a connoisseur of relics? Was William II a religious skeptic? Was Henry I an accessory to the murder of William II? One major difficulty is that we rarely know the physical appearances of these men. They were so-called black men, especially from the beginning of the Dark Ages to the early and late medieval times. In the modern sense, survive any of them. We have some sort of description of Edward the Confessor and the first three Norman kings. We have pictures of many kings, but they are all stylized and conventional. Nonetheless, the trappings of kingship, crowns, armor, costume, palaces, castles, and other objects, more or less intimately connected with them, Rings and jewels are made for them, books written for them, coins struck in their name can give us some kind of physical contact with them. And in the Bayeux tapestry, we see the story of the Norman conquest told by an English artist for the benefit of one of the greatest Norman lords, Odo Bishop of Bayeux, the conqueror, the conqueror's half brother. In it are shown Edward the Confessor and Harold, as well as William the Conqueror. From all these sources, the illustrations are drawn. They are an essential part of our purpose, which is to find out what we can know of the Saxons and Norman kings of England. It is sometimes thought that the real pursuit of historical problems cannot be undertaken without a heavy panoply of footnotes and technical arguments. There is a source of a great deal of truth in this, and it has been one of the chief difficulties in writing this book to make the argument genuine without making them too technical. In part, I have evaded this by regulating all detailed references to an appendix, which I hope is adequate to show serious students the material on which the text is based. But I have also been aware that if we remove the element of quest, the pursuit of problems, the borrowing into wormholes, we remove from history a great part of its interest. The study of medieval history, especially of the early Middle Ages, is largely detective work, and there is no reason why it should not be widely enjoyed as much. My theme is English kingship as it was known in the Germanic people, the Anglo-Saxons, to the Germanic people, the Anglo-Saxons, and who conquered and settled what we call England. In the 5th and 6th centuries, we who formed a multiplicity of tiny kingdoms, out of which the kingship of England grew. The period stretches from roughly around 450 AD to 1154 AD. In 400, most of the island had been part of the Roman Empire. In 406, the Vandals and the Burgundians broke across the Rhine into Gaul. In 410, Alaric and the Visigoths sacked Rome itself. The Roman Empire in the east survived until 1453. The Roman Empire in the west died in the 5th century. It died, in fact, that is, for its memory lingered on, a potent influence on all its former provinces. Meanwhile, military disaster led the Romans to abandon Britain and leave it a prey to barbarian attackers from Ireland, the Scots, and from Scotland, the Picts, and the and from Germany, the Roman provinces were broken into kingdoms whose precise number and extent are quite unknown. Tradition has it that the greatest of these was ruled by a king called Vortigern. In the mid 5th century, we know that the Saxons from northern Germany had visited England as pirates and mercenaries for some generations before the time of Vortigern, but Vortigern is said to have raised especially a powerful force of Saxon mercenaries under leaders called Hengist and Horsa. The Saxons presently turned on their master and formed a kingdom of their own, traditionally supposed to be the Kingdom of Kent. From then on, settlers from northern Germany came in numerous shiploads, sailed upon the Thames, the river of the Wash and Humber, formed little kingdoms and confederations, and conquered the native Britons. The Britons were not wholly defenseless. Early in the 6th century, they found a great leader whom tradition calls Arthur, who drove the German invaders out of a great part of the South Midlands. But this success was not lasting. By the late 6th century, the Germans had recovered what they had lost. They had conquered at least 2/3 of what we call England, and their supremacy was rapidly admitted to the rest. I'm going to leave it here and come back to this in the next video. All praises to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai Ba'ashem, Kadesh.